In 1975, one movie put an up-and-coming director on the map. With just a $9 million budget, Steven Spielberg turned Jaws into $193 million at the box office, a new record, 3 Oscars, and forever changed the way movies were to be produced, marketed, and made. It was a phenomenal feat. It became the highest-grossing film of all time and launched Steven Spielberg's incredible career. From there, Spielberg directed a little bit of everything: science fiction, comedy, adventure, family, prequels, sequels, dramas, war epics, and this. Today we are going to be looking solely on Jaws, however, and seeing why it works so well as a horror film. However, we will also be examining it thematically, to look at a few of the statements that the film makes. In the future, I'd like to examine and compare his other horror-esque movie, Jurassic Park, to Jaws, but for now, we're going to stick with Jaws. This should go without saying, but I will be discussing spoilers, so if you have not seen Jaws, make sure you check it out before finishing this video. The way that this breakdown is going to go is that my primary focus is going to be the first hour of the film. Thematically, it's a little bit richer, and a lot of the techniques that are used in the first half are later recycled from the second half. Just because I focused the majority of this video on the first half doesn't mean I prefer it any more to the second, but I just don't want to be redundant. But first, let's look at what this movie showed us. And the answer to that question is, well, it's very little. Let's take a look at the very beginning. I think it's very important to look at the opening titles of any movie, and the opening titles to this movie are pretty great. They essentially take us underwater from the perspective of a shark, while very bland text pops up on the screen. The text in this case is irrelevant, but what is relevant is the music. I'm certain just saying Jaws will get John Williams' phenomenal score playing in the back of your head, and the way that the score is used in these opening credits is great. I'll be discussing in some depth the music in this movie, and to be perfectly frank, I don't know anything about music or music production or theory or terms, so if I mess up on any terms, I'm going to apologize in advance. But in the opening credits, all we hear is the crescendo, the fast build-up, and just when we think we're about to get to the climax, we cut to a party on the beach. The classical soundtrack that we all know and love is all crescendo, but no climax. The reason that this edit works so well is because it shows us what we don't expect. Jaws is a great horror film because it flips the standards of what we have come to know while watching horror films. It flips that on its head. When watching this clip, you expect to see or hear something, but you get nothing. This simplicity is what makes Jaws such a great movie, and one that still holds up today, and is still going to hold up as long as movies are being made. Very few horror films released in the past 25 years would ever dare to break the formula and try something different, when the formula has made them so much money. But what they don't seem to understand is that the formula is what is holding them back as good horror movies. People aren't scared of what they already know, they're scared of the unknown. Back to Jaws, that is what it did so well. That incredible edit sets the tone, a very unnatural tone that is going to put the audience on the edge of their seat. They don't know what to expect, and in a horror film, that's pretty great. We know something is going to happen, but we don't know what or how until we see the water again. We immediately associate the water with the unnerve we just had and begin to put 2 and 2 together. Another thing that is so excellent about the opening is how it builds up a love story that we will never see through. We are watching love blossom in front of our eyes before we see it get torn apart by a shark, right? Except we're missing something. We're missing the key to that entire equation. We're missing the shark. In the opening scene, we never see the shark. In fact, we don't see the shark until over an hour into the film. We see other sharks before then, but never the shark. Essentially, what this allows the audience to do is to build up what they think the shark is in their own imagination. All we know is that a girl was attacked by something in the water, but we never saw what it was. I'm sure part of the reason why Spielberg never showed us the shark is that he wanted to build up anticipation, but a lot more of that had to do with cutting corners. The production of this film was plagued with nothing but problems. The shark model's not working, looking fake and breaking. So because of this was a time without CGI, and Spielberg was working with a limited budget, he was left with 2 options. 1, bring in a real shark, but apparently that was too dangerous, or 2, restrain and limit the use of the shark altogether and let the audience build it up in their minds. Thankfully, he went with the second option and created one of the greatest horror films of all time. We are then introduced to our first of 3 protagonists, Brody, and we immediately like him. He is a rather underdeveloped character with a likable family and a very just moral outlook on life. He is an Atticus Finch character, one with a perfect life, but the conflict in the story is seeing his character react to that conflict. He lives the American dream, he's successful, helps out others, and all around is a perfect character for a summer blockbuster. He is someone everyone likes, and no one can find anything to dislike. I mean, right now, think of a character flaw with Brody. I bet you can't. If all of our characters were like this, it would get boring fast, but thankfully we get a group of well-developed and well-fleshed-out characters to contrast this perfect character. I'm going to go out of order to discuss the other characters, but it's important to understand the characters to understand the movie. Quint is much more of a flawed character. We don't get too much backstory on him. However, from his introduction, we learn a few things. First, he has a reputation to him.
You all know me. Know how I earn a living?
He is a fisherman, and he's a very good one, and is willing to risk his life to catch the shark. There are a lot of parallels between him and Captain Ahab from Moby Dick. He is an older man, north of 50, he isn't on his deathbed, but at the same time he's not 20 anymore. And through going out on the boat, where he spent most of his career and life, he is able to give his life some sort of meaning before his eventual death. He is a self-centered character with personal goals. He raises the reward from $3,000 to $10,000. He also wanted to go out alone. He is someone who knows he lived past his heyday, and yet wants to go out with a bang, so to speak. Let's move on and discuss Hooper, who is an all-around good guy. He is someone brought in by the Oceanographic Institute to help with the shark problem. He is smart, but definitely isn't cocky about it. The first thing we see him do is offer to help two ambitious sailors looking to catch the shark. Unlike the other characters, however, Hooper isn't the most intimidating character out there. When he asks the passengers on the overcrowded boat to clear out, he is treated rather disrespectfully, and a big part of his character and character development is him growing into himself and becoming more confident. He is straight and to the point, knows what he needs to do, and does just that. He came from wealth, but he tries to ignore that and just focus on his career, and as we grow to know this character even better, I'll be discussing his character in more depth. Going back to the original timeline in which Brody finds the body of the girl from the opening, we are thrust into confusion. The officer looks terrified, Brody looks terrified, and the boy looks terrified, but what are they terrified of? And then it's revealed to us as we see a hand sticking out of the water. One thing that Spielberg chose to do in this was to avoid shooting shark attack sequences, was to show the after effects of the violence. Instead of seeing the action firsthand, we have to witness the effects of the action, which again, leaves more to our imagination. Brody decides to close the beach for the safety of the people, a choice that for him should be a no-brainer. I mean, there's a shark out there killing the people. Unfortunately, he isn't the only one who has a say in the matter. When he's going by and trying to keep the Boy Scouts out of the ocean, a very noble act I might add, the mayor comes to talk with him, to advise or demand to keep the beach open. This conflict on the ferry is one of my favorite shots in the entire movie. On the left are the three lawmen who have a profit motive, trapping Brody in. On the right are the officers and the ferry operator, who I think represent the everyday man. A brand new shiny Cadillac stands between the left and the right, essentially cutting the everyday man off from the ones looking for money. The clothes they are wearing also have some significance. Of what we can see, all the men on the right are wearing khaki-colored pants. On the left, Brody is also wearing his khaki-colored pants, however all three lawmen are wearing a variation of blue or gray. Brody should be on the left but is stuck on the right because of wealth, represented by the Cadillac. He is forced to do what he doesn't want to do because of money. The scene wraps up nicely with the mayor asking the ferry keeper to take him back, showing that the trip only had significance to stop the declaration of the shark attack and thus to keep the beaches open. However, this also ruined Brody's original intention, which was to get the Boy Scouts out of the water. After the mayor decides to keep the waters open, Brody acts as a lifeguard as he's looking for people in danger. Throughout the entire scene, people come up to him to ask him for personal favors. While he is trying to save others, they are worried about themselves. We hear the classic score again. Now at this point we know to associate that score with a shark attack. We know something is going to happen, but we don't know when or how or even what. And then the attack happens. Again, we still see no shark, we just see the results of the attack. We get that incredible shot of Brody realizing what happened. This shot is the dolly zoom and was originally perfected by Alfred Hitchcock in Vertigo. The way that this was achieved is actually really simple. The camera zooms out while moving forward. Brody's face is always the same size and in the same place, however the background is changing rapidly. This shot has been studied and replicated hundreds of times, but is definitely worth pointing out simply because of how cool it is. However, while this great shot is happening, as is death. In the water, a boy, Alex Kistner, dies swimming. This was Brody's biggest fear. He wanted to close the beach but couldn't because of finances, so he put himself in charge of protecting the waters, but was distracted. This is his character's development. He is in a dark spot now. He allowed someone to die under his watch. While all this is happening, Steven Spielberg is creating chaos on screen. We're getting fast cuts in between images of people jumping in the water while a new score by John Williams plays. Earlier we didn't get a climax and only had crescendo, but now we do. It's loud, it's chaotic, and that mixed with the great visuals makes this scene full of chaos. The music ends and the mother searches for her son. We already know what happened, even though we didn't explicitly see it. I don't think that there has ever been a movie that flows so much like a book like Jaws does. The reason why so many people prefer books to film is that our imaginations are in charge when reading a book, and that is what Spielberg allows us to do in this film. We get the shot of Alex Kistner's floaty toy washing up on screen, but by that time, it was already too late. One thing that I really appreciate from Steven Spielberg is how he uses music so sparingly in this movie. He only uses it when he needs it. For the most part, the movie plays without music. However, when there is a need for it, it makes it seem even more intense because we haven't been hearing it. A big theme in this movie is that of capitalism and the money versus the well-being of the people. Obviously, this was brought up when it came to the debate of keeping the beaches open and when Brody gave in, and because of that, someone died. However, the people with the money try and use the money to right their wrong by offering a reward to those able to catch and kill the shark. However, this seemingly good idea creates even more chaos as people are arguing.
Mother says what the shark's looking for. We don't even know that there's a shark around here.
The death of the boy plunges the city into chaos, but not because he died, but because there is money to be made. Brody says,
Talk to Mrs. Kidney because this is going to turn into a contest.
People are taking advantage of the story for personal gain. The movie shows the lowest of the human population and how we take advantage of a bad situation. People are making jokes about the bounty.
Is that $3,000 bounty on the shark in cash or check?
And have no respect for the situation at hand. Brody announces that he is going to have to close the beaches, and surprisingly, he is met with groans from the audience. Someone died because the beaches were left open, and yet, that isn't good enough for people. Again, they are thrust into chaos before the mayor jumps in saying the beaches will be closed for 24 hours. Brody objects to this because he thinks it should be closed longer than that. However, the mayor still isn't taking the security seriously and is thus deterring Brody from doing his jobs. However, surprisingly, Brody isn't the most upset. He is upset because the beaches are only going to be closed for one day. However, the townspeople are upset that they will be closed for one whole day. There is no winning. That is until they meet Quint. I already introduced him, so there's no need to reiterate myself, but it is worth mentioning that after he requests an additional $7,000, the mayor originally blows him off. He is not willing to negotiate more money for safety. At home, Brody finds out his son, Michael, is sitting in a boat in the ocean. Worried about him, he tells him to get inside now. Brody has a savior complex. He probably knows the boys will be safe in the shallow water, but he still wants them out of it. And judging by the framing of the shot, it appears Spielberg agreed with him. The camera takes the perspective of Brody, and so we take his side. However, his wife doesn't immediately take his side. The perfect life that was pointed out earlier in the film is being torn apart by the fear of a shark attack. While he and his wife are arguing, the post separates them. Spielberg did so many great techniques and subtleties in this movie that unfortunately go unnoticed today, and this shot perfectly embodies that. His wife sees what could happen, and as she yells at Michael to come inside, she crosses the post to take Brody's side. At this point in the movie, everyone wants to catch the shark, and even more families are having problems. Two hopeful shark catchers discuss using
Better catch something. This is my wife's holiday roast.
as bait. Later that night, Williams' score plays as the shark pulls the two men on the dock into the water. This is significant because it shows that your everyday man isn't good enough to go after the shark. You need someone special. Someone who is going after it solely for the money isn't the right person for the job. I would also like to mention that this is the third shark attack so far in the movie. We are nearly a quarter of the way done with it, and yet we are still yet to see a shark. This scene is a great example of visual storytelling. Instead of seeing the shark turn around, we instead see the torn off dock turn around. It's really crazy what a small budget and a big creativity can do to make a movie great. The next day, everyone and their dog are out to catch the shark, and I'm not using the expression there. Everyone and their dog are literally out to catch the shark. People on boats are going crazy trying to catch it, chumming the water while they're moving, not knowing how to actually chum the water. Some are even willing to throw dynamite into the water. It's also worth mentioning that this is when we finally meet Hooper. He begins to examine the body of the first victim. He reacts in a negative way to seeing the body as he hyperventilates. This serves to really humanize the character and make him feel more realistic and more relatable by the audience. He asks Brody if he...
And did you notify the Coast Guard about this?
No, it was only local jurisdiction.
Further showing corruption in politics. The townspeople brought back a shark and sure enough are arguing about who caught it. I've always loved how there's an arrow in it, showing how primitive these people are. Obviously it's not the shark they're looking for, and Hooper is able to assure them. Brody faces the hardest thing he's had to do, a confrontation with Mrs. Kistner, the mother of the second victim. To be perfectly honest, this scene doesn't hold the emotional weight that I think that it could. And with the soundtrack running in the background, I think it would be a lot better. But regardless, when she says she found out it was Brody's fault because he didn't choose to close the beach, it still packs one big emotional punch.
The girl got killed here last week. And you knew it.
This is the line that really swings him into action. He is now someone willing to go out there and do his part in trying to catch the shark for the betterment of his town and the people. Not only is he willing to at this point, but he has to. At dinner, Brody and his son play a game in which Michael copies him. This scene is very significant because it shows Brody willing to cut the last string holding him back, his family. He knows his son is going to grow up to be like him. A simple yet effective song plays in the background, and he asks his son to
Give us a kiss.
Why?
Because I need it.
This is because he is willing to let go, willing to go out there. Hooper comes by and tells a story about how he got into sharks and his interest in sharks. He is capable of dealing with a shark and swimming back to water. However, Brody isn't. He's afraid of the water. Brody is an Irish name meaning of mud or of ground. Brody is in his comfort zone when he has two legs on solid ground, but he has to go into the water to catch the shark. Hooper and Brody go out into the water to search for the shark. This isn't the main expedition, but it's significant because they find a boat that was attacked. Hooper jumps into the water, and very different music plays. The iconic score that we all know is replaced with a very mystic one. However, that quickly transitions into the intense soundtrack. We then get my favorite jump scare in maybe cinematic history. As Hooper finds the body of the shark's third victim. As he comes up from the water, that mystic music has made its transition to the score that we have grown to fear at this point. He safely makes his way back on land, and the next day, Brody and Hooper talk about the mayor about an immediate course of action. It's the same old story. The mayor won't listen to the cautionary tale no matter how hard they insist. The mayor is more interested in the vandalism that could drive away tourism, but save someone's life. In the next scene, we see the masses of tourists roll in. Precautions are set up, but we all know that that's not going to be good enough. The mayor is disappointed seeing as nobody is in the water and really demands that someone go in. They bring their family, and this attracts more people into the water. There was a false alarm at first, but then...
Shark! The shark!
For the first time into the movie, we see the shark. It's brief and from a distance, however, it is significant because the payoff was definitely worth the wait. We do not see the entire shark, but instead just a fin and a little bit of its back. The shark did have another victim. Brody's son Michael saw someone get eaten and went into shock. He recovered, but now Brody has a personal reason to want to get into this water. He has had his family affected by the shark. At this point, he has two options, run or fight. His wife gives him the option to go home, back to New York where they're from. However, he has had too much taken from him. He is going to go against the shark no matter the odds. Brody confronts the mayor. Hooper and Brody couldn't say anything to help him close the beaches. 3 people had to die before finally listened, and he did by signing Quint into action and allowing him the $10,000 if he catches and kills the shark. Brody, Quint, and Hooper are all in the same room. Quint wants to go alone, but Hooper talks himself into going. However, their relationship begins with hostility. Quint describes Brody's hands as
You got city hands, Mr. Hooper.
showing disrespect to him immediately. Brody goes into the group and the 3 of them are going out there. While loading supplies onto the boat, the root of the fight between Hooper and Quint is revealed. It's a struggle between old and new. Quint is a very obviously and well-rounded and very experienced extreme fisherman. Look no further than all the shark bones and skulls strung up around his house. He has his way of doing things, and obviously it works. And ideally, he would get this shark done the same way. However, Hooper is someone who is just as qualified. He's been studying marine predators since his youth, takes a very modern approach to shark catching. He isn't going out on that water with a knife, he is going out there prepared with real equipment. The clash of the characters is the primary focus in the second half of this movie. Let's discuss the way that this film is split up because it's very unusual. I'm sure most of you know the typical 3-act structure that most films follow. The normal runtime is broken down usually into the first and third acts taking up 25% each, and the second act taking up 50%. This movie is unusual in that the first act takes up 50% of the time, and the second and third take up 25%. The reason that this works so well is really simple. Spielberg spent over half his movie developing characters in conflict at once. It makes the audience even more attached to our characters, so at the beginning of the second act, when they go out into the water to try and catch the shark, it builds up anticipation. We get my favorite shot in this movie as we see the boat leaving for open waters through the mouth of the shark. We know what's going to happen. They're going into this shark's territory, and this shot shows that off perfectly. The conflict between Hooper and Quint strengthens as the pestering and insultings continue on the boat. Quint desperately wants to hold on to his old ways, however Hooper is determined to keep the new ways coming. Quint starts making fun of the compressed air, despite Hooper warning people of its power. Quint's traditional methods look like they're paying off. He hooks the shark, straps himself in, and appears to be going well. The shark goes under the boat, but Hooper has his doubts. Hooper tries the traditional methods, and it doesn't work. However, the shark chews through the piano wire. For the first time, we see the shark up close and menacing, just feet away. Amidst all the chaos and constant bickering and fighting, the shark emerges, and the one person who hasn't taken a side is left to confront it. Brody announces,
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
it's man versus nature, and nature appears to have the upper hand. As we see the shark from a distance, a new version of the score plays, louder and deeper to signify more immediate danger. The slow build-up that happened earlier in the movie is done. It is jumping right to the fast-paced score that by this point we associate with death by shark. The shark is coming right at them. Quint and Hooper get to work and start to work together. The bickering is over. They will do everything they can. Got a harpoon into the shark, so they go for another shot, but he disappears. All night long they wait for him. The first encounter with the shark brought them together. Quint and Hooper are able to make up with each other as they compare various wounds they have gotten throughout the years, as they laugh and drink the whole while. They put their differences behind them, move in closer on the couch, and now they've really grown to respect and accept each other. Quint tells a story about surviving a giant shark massacre, and that really made Hooper appreciate him. However, in their period of bonding, they forgot to look for the shark, but the shark found them and began to attack. The attack stops as abruptly as it came, however the boat suffered extreme damage. The next morning they are working on repairing it when the barrel resurfaces. The shark attacks, leaves, however the radio is broken, the engine is damaged, and they are left with next to nothing. This marks the beginning of the third act. The three have bonded together. Hooper and Quint are also wearing the same color clothes, showing that they have been able to work together. However, now it's up to them to work together and overcome the odds in order to defeat the shark. We get another shot of the shark up close, and they begin to pursue. It's beginning to look like they have a chance, and they have the shark harpooned twice now, shot it at least once with a pistol. However, it's not working. It seems like nothing they will do will even stand a chance against the shark. The shark begins to pull the boat, and they begin to start losing, so to speak. As the shark chases the boat, they suddenly see the engine starts to malfunction, and are stuck in the middle of the ocean with a very angry shark circling them. Quint asks Hooper,
Hooper, what exactly can you do with these things of yours?
and is willing to use modern tools to hunt the shark. They agree to use the shark cage, something that symbolically holds them down. As the cage lowers, Brody knows that everyone is trapped. He and Quint are trapped on the boat, and Hooper in the water. In the cage and in the water, the shark immediately goes to attack Hooper. It looks like it's all over. Blood is gushing. Hooper is alone in the cage with the shark just feet away. When they pull the cage up, it's empty. The shark attacks the boat and eats Quint, who is able to hurt it with the machete. Brody is alone and Hooper is alone, but Brody is alone with the shark. After he successfully defeats it using the oxygen tank, it shows that new technology is what ultimately prevails. They lost a friend but killed the shark and ultimately make it back to land. So, in conclusion, Jaws is almost universally accepted as a great movie. It's incredibly well made, makes a few pretty good points about new and old generations. It's an incredibly effective horror movie, but works just as well as an action-adventure movie. It builds up lovable and relatable characters, and is all around a pretty great movie. It's a milestone for filmmakers, inspired so many new and great techniques. I mean, look no further than cinematography if you want to see smart and effective, innovative tricks. This is a movie that showed you don't need an enormous budget to make an enormous film. You just need someone smart behind the camera. Jaws forever changed cinema. I would assume you love it, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. So make sure you drop a comment and tell me what you think about this movie. If you're interested in seeing some of my previous analytical work, the video on the left is going to take you to my review and analysis of Mad Max Fury Road. On the right is going to be a theme breakdown of The Big Lebowski, in which I discuss what the Coen brothers might have been actually saying in the movie. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop a like, it really helps me out, and subscribe so you can join me next time.